Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. We will now move on to the approval of minutes. The regular meeting of the State Transportation Commission of July 18th, 2024. You've all had a chance to review the minutes. Is there any questions? Is there any comments? Is there any additions, deletions? If not, what is the pleasure of the commission?
I
Mr.
actually
Chair.
do have a point. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Gary.
Go ahead, Helma.
I just wanted to point out in the minutes, there's a section for the secretary's report, and it's got that same heading twice. And I can't remember which page. It was like page 3 and 4 of the minutes. Might just remove one of those headings. It's a very small issue, but it says commission. It says secretary's report or secretary's statement twice. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Chenoweth. Commissioner Tonjes.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In the first paragraph, last sentence, if we could change my name from Greg to Gary. I love the name Greg, but I'm going to stick with Gary.
Okay, Commissioner Greg.
Thank you.
We do have those too, so with the comments that have been made, what is the pleasure of the commission? Do we have a motion for approval of the minutes pending the two changes, one with the secretary's heading and number 2 going from Commissioner Gregg to Commissioner Gary?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lundstrom. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Commissioner Chenoweth. May I have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Chenoweth?
Yes.
Commissioner Lundstrom? Commissioner Lundstrom?
Yes.
Commissioner Tonjes?
Yes.
We have a unanimous, and with that, we will move on to public comment. And I don't think there will be any. Is there anyone with public comment to come before this commission?
Nobody has signed up.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to move on to action items, and we're going to move on to Transportation Project Fund Awards for FY25. Secretary, I have one question, Mr. Secretary. Are you, when we get to this, and I think Clarissa's going to also be involved, are we going to read each district's projects?
Mr. Chairman, unless the commissioners would like for us to do so, we anticipate that you all have been able to review them in the packet by entity, title, and dollar amount. But what we can do is open it up for questions after the overview. And if I could just kind of start over, Mr. Chairman, I want to thank everyone, Christine and our IT staff for making the meeting possible. I know it's a simpler form, but it still takes a lot of time and energy, and comms, Miguel and the comms team for getting the meeting set up. And I want to wish everybody a happy Zozobra 100th anniversary. I know everybody's really excited about that. So, Mr. Chairman, just to get started, thank you guys for being here. And I'll turn it over to Clarissa to talk a little bit about the high-level budget we had available, and the projects that we're recommending. But just to give some context here, the Transportation Project Fund budget is established in statute and generated by and funded with tax distributions that essentially guide the sum of resources that we get annually. This year, we were able to appropriate $52.5 million across the districts, and as you all are aware, the process begins with an open application to local entities, that's tribal governments, counties, and municipalities. Those applications were due, I believe, on May 30th of this year. Then the vetting process of those applications starts at the district. It includes, to my understanding, you all as commissioners during a portion of the vetting process. The district makes recommendations to the general office, where myself, along with others, review them and then work essentially to allocate the $52.5 million in a real equitable way. What I want to do is point out that Since we misspelled his name in the minutes, District 2 allocation is higher than the other districts, and so Commissioner Tonjes, that's for the typo. But in all seriousness, I did want to point out why you see that the awards for District 2 are a little weighted. Over the course of last fiscal year, the city of Carlsbad received TPF allocation about $2 million. And then subsequently received a federal award. The statutory, well, actually the administrative rule guidelines for TPF is that they cannot mix a TPF award with a federal award. And that's done for a number of reasons, primarily to expedite projects and to make them more affordable. And so after a lot of discussion with the city, what we did was we pooled their TPF award with their concurrence, and we replaced it with federal target dollars so that that project could continue to move forward. And because we pooled last year's $2 million from District 2, this year we made a commitment to push it back in. And that's fundamentally because the $2 million that we took from Carlsbad rolled over into this year. And so that's the explanation, but of course, the final approvals are subject to your all feedback and approval. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll hand it over to Clarissa. I hope I didn't steal, I think, your notes.
Just a quick comment, Secretary, and I know that you vigorously each year go in and fight for funds for the DOT, and this year I want to do whatever I need to do, and I would hope that we continue to try to get more money for this transportation fund. We've seen, since I've been on the commission, we've seen anywhere from 160 million, which was fantastic. We were almost able to allocate $30 million to each district. I mean, that was, and then we've done a little higher. I think for reasons, we ended up with the minimum, and it's that permanent fund that was set up through the help of Representative Lundstrom, and that is a permanent fund that no matter if budgets go dry or what the funding is, that we are going to have that 51 million or 52 million every year. And so I would hope that we could go in and lobby and do whatever we can, and I'll be part of that. And I just think that this money is so important to get it to our entities, to get it to our neighbors, and with this money, they're able to do projects, especially in the rural communities. This is money that if we didn't allocate it, that they wouldn't be able to do projects. So anyway, with that, thank you, Secretary, and Clarissa can fill us in on the rest.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. If I can
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. If I can have you turn to page 23, you'll find a request to approve our FY25 Transportation Project Fund Program. As Secretary Cerna mentioned, this year's transportation budget was $52,540,000. This amount does include total cost for the local entities that identified that they would be applying for match waiver assistance to help them with their 5% match. Pages 24 through 25, you'll find the list of new projects for FY25. If the match waiver column is listing yes, the entities are intending to apply for those match waiver funding to cover that 5%. So in those, total costs was taken into consideration. And then on page 26, you'll find something new. It's a new section called supplemental projects. So we'd like to seek approval for these two projects in the event that DFA, the Department of Finance and Administration, denies any of the match waiver requests that are submitted, because that would free up additional budget. And if that were the case, we'd like to have approval to select one of these two projects. With that, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I stand for any questions.
Commissioners, is there any comments? You all had a chance to review this before the meeting. Is there any comments? Is there any questions? Gary, you took some of my money. I'm sad, but it was needed. It was needed. So commissioners, after reviewing and We've heard the recommendation. Mr. Secretary, what is your recommendation?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend approval of these projects. I want to thank the district engineers. I know it's not easy. They work very closely with the communities that submit these applications. They vet them. They work with their MPOs, RTPOs to essentially rank them. There's a number of things that go into the mix. Just to give you all a sense of how difficult it is for us to whittle this down for you. The sum of all requests was $244 million, of which about 12.5 million included match waivers. And so to be sure, it's hard to not be able to fund each of these projects, at least in some way, shape, or form. As Clarissa mentioned, we did change it up a little bit with some alternates. We're looking to see whether or not there may be additional match funding that remains after DFA identifies the financial statements and financial capacity for communities. And so we're hopeful we can pull in at least some of those alternates and really get down to the penny here. So, Mr. Chair, I recommend approval of the projects.
And before we go on to see what is the pleasure of the commission, I again, as you, Secretary, would like to thank the districts for their hard work and the people that are in charge of these road funds and the people that deal with these entities on a day in and day out basis, trying to help them with the applying and letting them know the process and everything. So our thanks goes out to them too, because I know it's a rigorous process and it's a never-ending process. So with that, do I have any other comments from commissioners?
I do have a question.
Commissioner Chenoweth.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chair Adams. How are the entities going to be notified that they've either received or not received their request? I'm just curious, and we can answer this after the vote, but I'm curious about the communication. Thank you.
Commissioner Chenoweth, I think we'll let the commissioners notify their individual communities. I'm kidding. What we could do, and I don't know, Clarissa, if there's a better answer, but what we could do is publish the final approved list of projects and then notify the communities through our local government, liaisons at each district that they can point the communities there for the final approved projects. Does that sound like a...
We also, Commissioner Chenoweth, we also do send out, early next week, we'll probably do it, the approval letters. We draft those, address them to the entities. Those go out to our district coordinators and they distribute those to the entities that were awarded.
Okay.
And what about the entities that were not awarded? How do they?
We also do the same process and notify them.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Does that work, Commissioner Chenoweth?
Yes, I just wanted to know for my own purposes what the process is. Thank you.
Yes, and that's why, I think maybe in the future, maybe we should just read them all out and go through them. Because I know there's some people that have tuned in, wondering whether they were funded or not. So we could at another time, and if you would want that right now, we still have time to go ahead and go by district, not the amounts, not anything, just the projects that were funded. Would you want that?
I don't want to hijack the process that's already been put in place with the agenda. So I think folks are maybe also antsy to get going, but I will defer to the other commissioners. If they would want to do that for their districts, I will go with the pleasure of the rest of the commission. Thank you. Commissioner
Lundstrom.
Yes.
Do you want them to read out the, well, not the amounts, but just the projects that got awarded from your district, or are you all right with you to review?
I can read that. I mean, I don't know. It's going to be a public information. The public wants to see it. That's fine with me if you want to do that. Either way, it doesn't matter to me. Either way.
Okay, Commissioner Tonjes.
No need to do so unless, as you said, there are several people online who are curious.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move on then. It seems like it's yes, maybe no, so we'll just leave it at where it's at. you've heard the recommendation from the secretary, so what is the pleasure of the commission for approval of the fund awards for FY 25? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the,
We have a motion by Commissioner Chenoweth. Do we have a second?
Just second.
We have a second by Commissioner Tonjes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll get a roll call vote.
Chairman Adams,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chenoweth,
yes.
Commissioner Lundstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonjes.
Yes.
Thank you. That carries unanimously, and now we will move on to the operational budget for FY 26. John Tennyson.
Good morning, Chairman Adams, Commission, Secretary. Just first off, what I'd like to do is just kind of introduce you guys real quick to the staff that assembles this all together, just to kind of give them the recognition for all the hard work that they've put in throughout the year, getting this operating budget done, the rollover, and getting through this budget request process. So beside me, I have our Chief Economist, Michael Morrison. Our budget analyst, Jennifer Roywall. Budget analyst, Daniel Salazar. Budget analyst, Manuel Lopez. And our economist, Kwaku Boachi. And these are the team that puts this all together throughout the year. And I just wanted to give them recognition. Oh, and my budget manager, Sofia Ulabari Trujillo. She was hiding back there, I apologize. But this is the team that puts this all together throughout the year, that goes through the revenue, that goes through the budget, and makes sure that our budget stays in line with what's set forth in the law. And I just want to give them a recognition for all the hard work that they do. And with that, we'll go ahead and continue. So just one minor thing, this will be the budget request for FY26, as the operational budget will be established once legislation is in.
John, before you go on,
Yes.
On behalf of the commission, we would like to thank you and your staff for the wonderful job that they do, the hard work that they put in. And being that we're on a Zoom meeting and we can't meet with them in person, maybe you can take them to one of the meetings that we are having live. We have one coming up in Rio Rancho, which isn't far away. We would really like to recognize them for the job that they do. And again, it's very much appreciated by this commission. So with that, John, I'll let you continue.
Thank you, Chairman. So from here, we'll go ahead and present the budget. So this will be the FY26 NMDOT budget request that we will be submitting to DFA and LFC on Tuesday, September 3rd. So we'll go ahead and start off with our Chief Economist, Michael Morrison, who will go over the revenue for you.
So this forecast is one of two annual forecasts for NMDOT revenue. The other forecast will be next January, just before the legislative session, 26 budget is set. Looking at the forecast, the road fund recurring revenues are now estimated at 557 million or 556.5, which is increase of about 1.2% or $6.4 million from the FY25 budget. We're looking at that is mainly being driven by, the increase is mainly being driven by vehicle registration fees, weight distance tax, and our road fund interest. It's being kind of the growth in those areas has been offset by lower than expected gasoline, special fuel, and motor vehicle excise tax revenues. As with all the forecasts, it is there is some uncertainty coming forward, including the risk of recession, any steps taken by the Federal Reserve affecting interest rates, and any changes that might be coming from the upcoming presidential election. Going forward, just wanted to mention a few quick points. Some of the major revenue sources, we have the gasoline tax that Expected to be lower in FY '24 through '26 before recovering up to 113 million in FY '27, and then beginning the back to the slow decline trend that we've seen before. Special fuel and weight distance tax and trip tax revenues, they've been negatively hurt by transition after the slow transition after the pandemic from heavy goods consumption to more goods and services consumption within the U.S. So we're seeing commercial traffic start to decrease a little bit. We're expecting that to continue leading into FY 26 or 27, depending on the tax revenue or the tax program, and then begin back to trend growth. Looking
Just a quick comment is that I think the secretary and I and some of the commissioners have talked about this before, but we got to be ready, because I think with the influx of electric cars, we're going to see a decrease in the gasoline tax, which is going to mean that some of the funding will be affected from that we do receive for that. So I think for the future, we just got to try to figure that part out.
Absolutely. We're right now we're seeing most of the decrease in gasoline taxes due to higher fuel efficiency vehicles, but as electric vehicles begin to become a larger portion of the market, we're expecting to see that start to take bigger bites out of our gasoline tax revenues. We do have a long-run forecast I can show if you'd like. I can send you in the future. Additionally, just mentioned the motor vehicle excise tax expected to remain relatively flat through FY 25 and 26, and then start to grow thereafter as interest rates start to get back to a more normal level going forward. If we go on to the next page, looking at some of the restricted funds, we're looking at overall NMDOT state funds forecast at 661 million for FY 26. That's an increase of 0.8% or 5.4 million from the FY 25 budget. The Highway Infrastructure Fund, Local Government Road Fund, Aviation Fund, they're all expected to remain relatively flat throughout the forecast horizon. The Transportation Project Fund will remain flat in FY 25 before shrinking in FY 26. The Transportation Fund is expected to drop a bit in FY 25 due to some legislative changes, but continue to grow in FY 26 and remain relatively flat thereafter. And the next page we have we call our finger chart. This goes through the different tax programs, their rates, and then a summary of how they're distributed. Stand for any questions.
It seems like it's a pretty healthy budget, and it doesn't seem like it's varied as much. So, commissioners, is there any questions, comments? And I'd like our secretary to get it, let us know what he thinks about the budget and going forward. So with that, I open it up to my fellow commissioners.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, and I'm not sure exactly to whom this should be directed, but just in looking at this and giving consideration to the timing of all of the work that went in place here, recognize that obviously in Ruidoso there have been some extraordinary circumstances, and we don't yet know what that full impact is going to be as they continue to deal with flood. But I see the crews working extraordinary hours trying to fix, repair everything that is happening there, and I'm just wondering how that is given consideration.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that's really a great question. And so you may recall at the last meeting, we presented to you all a bar that was approved prior to the end of the fiscal year to essentially cover some anticipated gaps in salaries at our patrols, and we attribute that to a lot of the overtime that our men and women are working for a number of things, and disaster recovery is one of them for sure. And so we essentially monitor and manage that on an ongoing basis. And then I think it was Mr. Padilla reported out, or actually it was Francisco Sanchez reported out at LFC a couple weeks ago in Ruidoso that we estimated about $500,000 in expenditures up until this point for Ruidoso recovery. So what we fundamentally do is make the shifts internally, whether it's for the materials that we need to help on disaster recovery, but we're also monitoring those expenditures. And then we arrive at a point where we work with Department of Homeland Security to capture them and then submit for FEMA reimbursement. And so the districts do a really good job of really monetizing their work, and then we make a decision to submit for reimbursement, recoup the funding.
Thank you very much.
And Secretary, just like, that is a good question, but just like we did during the Calf Canyon fire, a lot of those funds were recoupable through the FEMA, although it takes a while to recoup, but a lot of the money that we're investing into those areas, as far as getting them back to normal as possible, is reimbursable, as you said. So I think that helps us a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on, if you can go to the next slide, I can present to you guys what we will proceed forward with. Okay, so this is what the budget will look like when we go in front of negotiations and in front of legislative process. So what you see in front of you is what we're going to go forward with. So in column A, you'll see what our FY25 operating budget is. In column B, you'll see what our FY26 budget request is. And in column C, what the dollar change is from FY26 against FY25. So in the category 200s, we're going to see a change of $416,000. So we'll be going in with $222 million in the category 200s. In the category 3s, we'll be going in with $668.9 million, which is a $9.1 million difference. In the 400s, we'll be going in for $360 rounded for the category 400s, which is a $21.8 million difference. The total will be $1,251.3 million that we'll be going in with. On the revenues, you'll see the change that, as Michael had mentioned previously, that the State Road Fund will see an increase of $6.4 million. The restricted funds will see about 1.3 dollar change. The transfers, which do come from tax and revenue for the ports of entry, we're going to go in with an additional $1 million that will be transferred to us. As far as the fund balances that were done, we will see a decrease in the fund balances because that's the fund balance that we established in the operating budget for the additional needs that were needed for the department. So those will be taken away as is done every request. The only change this year is the Highway Infrastructure Fund will need an additional $644,000 to match its debt service obligation. As far as the federal funding goes, we will be increasing our FHWA funding by $10.3 million as part of the Biden law. We will be increasing the NHTSA project will be flat. The FTA will be increasing by $10.7 million, and that's to help out with a renovation that is done to the Jim West NCTRD office in Espanola. Going on as a wrap up to everything, the FY26 budget request will be $1.3 billion. It's a $30.5 million decrease from the FY25 operating budget. The appropriation is supported by the revenue piece, which is $556.5 million of state road fund dollars, $104.6 million of restricted fund, $10.8 million in transfers from tax and rev and DFA, $644.5 thousand of highway infrastructure fund balance, $579.4 million for federal revenue. In the program budgets, $793.7 million will go to project design and construction, $300 million will be going to highway operations, $51.3 million will be going to business support, and $106.3 million will be going to the modal program. In wrapping up the FY26 budget request against the FY25 operating budget, The state revenue increased by 6.4 million. The restricted revenue increased by 1.7 million. Transfers from TRD and DFA decreased, or they are increased by $1 million. Elimination of 60.6 million of state road fund and restricted fund balance, and the federal revenue increased by 21 million. On the next few slides, it does go into by program. If you'd like, I can go into further detail on how each program is broken apart, if you need that kind of breakdown, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any questions, comments from fellow commissioners? Okay, you can go ahead and move on.
Okay, so if there's no questions, or would you like me to go into further detail, Mr. Chair, or?
No,
Okay.
unless my fellow commissioners will want more detail, but if not, then I think it's been a good review. Mr. Secretary, are you happy with this budget and it is going to meet all our needs in the upcoming year?
Mr. Chairman, no and no, I guess. It probably won't meet our needs, and we certainly are working on ways to increase the budget. And so let me just start by saying I too want to thank John and his team for putting this together. As you all have come to know, our revenues stay pretty static. Like John mentioned, we receive a 3% year-over-year increase from the bipartisan infrastructure law. It amounts to 10 to 13 million, give or take, depending. We do receive federal redistribution again, which is helpful. This year it'll be about $48 million, about there. But what we're working on, just for your information, to answer your question about does it meet our need, is we're looking at ways to increase revenue distributions to the Department of Transportation. And so we're working with the governor's office, her infrastructure advisor, Rebecca Ruse, on exploring a number of things that range from increasing existing distributions, creating additional distributions, and certainly watching what other states are doing by way of the adoption of some surcharge or revenue that addresses the increase to electric vehicle use. But as Michael mentioned earlier, we're also watching what fuel-efficient vehicles are doing to fuel tax revenues. And so in that regard, it's not only electric vehicles, it's those that are becoming increasingly efficient in their use of gasoline. And so we just want to let you know that, yes, I certainly support the approval of this budget, but I also want you all to know that as the cost of construction increases at a minimum of 5% year after year, we're looking at ways to catch up from a revenue generating perspective. And all of that is in addition to what we seek on non-recurring funding.
Let me just ask it maybe a different way. I mean, do you see anything that is alarming that we should be concerned about? I know that there's areas that we're gonna go and seek alternate funding, but I mean, is there anything that stands out that is alarming?
Mr. Chairman, no, absolutely not. The agency does a great job of living within its revenues.
Perfect. Or maybe that was a better way to ask it, but thank you. And so, is there any other comments from commissioners? With that, what is your recommendation, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chair, I ask for your approval of the budget as presented.
You have heard the recommendation from the Secretary for approval of the operational budget for FY26. What is the pleasure of this commission? Can I get a motion?
Yes, sir. So
Mr.
moved.
Chair, I make a motion, we accept this budget as presented.
I have a motion from Commissioner Lundstrom. Do I have a second?
Tonjes, second.
We have a second from Commissioner Tonjes. With that, can we get a roll call vote?
Chairman Adams,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chenoweth,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonjes.
Yes.
And with that, we would like to thank again John and your team. And as I said, if you could take him to a meeting in the future, we'd like to personally thank him. And thank you, Mr. Secretary, for the work that you put in helping guide the budget. And with that, is there anyone else or any other business to come before this commission? If
I would,
not,
no, I
okay.
would actually make a comment, please, if I may,
Commissioner
Chairman
Chenoweth.
Adams.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't want to gloss over Secretary Serna's concern and his, the avenues that he's trying to pursue to make sure that NMDOT has the income to really create impactful changes in our infrastructure. And I would really like to encourage him to rely on his commission to help him move that forward, whether it's within the governor's office or at the state legislature. I think it is so important for us to really be talking about infrastructure as a strategic way of improving our economic development in this state. So I would like to thank Secretary Serna for all of his efforts to do that, and to please encourage him to actually bring us in to help with that effort as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chenoweth. Mr. Secretary?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, you're absolutely right. Once we establish that framework, sharing that with you all as part of our overall legislative strategy, we'll in part be asking for your help to get that done.
Any other comments or any other feedback from commissioners?
Mr. Chair, Gary Tonjes here. Just to echo that which was just offered by both of the folks before me, but to say I'm glad to be engaged in whatever fashion is necessary. I know others would as well. It was clear in going through the process of understanding, some of the needs in District 2 and hearing the report from the Secretary about $244 million in requests that came forward. We're a long way from meeting the needs, I know, and obviously there are great needs in a variety of areas in our state, but this certainly is one that is critical, and would love to do whatever I can to assist in trying to bring forward or secure additional dollars in support of Secretary's efforts and that of yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Tonjes.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Well, with that, on behalf of this commission, we'd like to thank everybody for attending this meeting. We want to wish all of you a very, very safe Labor Day weekend. I know that as soon as we adjourn this meeting, people will start heading out and enjoying probably what is considered the last vacation before we start hitting the snow season. So I'd like to thank everybody, and with that, is it the pleasure of this commission? And if so, can I get a motion for adjournment at approximately 10:41?
So moved.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Chenoweth, a second by Commissioner Lundstrom. Can I get a roll call vote?
Chairman Adams,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chenoweth,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundstrom,
Yes.
Commissioner Tonjes.
Yes.
Again, thank you all. The meeting is officially adjourned, and we will
Thank
see
you.
you all in Rio Rancho.
Yes.
You guys.
Thank you.